Would Africa become the next manufacturing floor for the world? Africa. What do we know about Africa? Of course, we all know where Africa is, but how many of us know there are actually 54 countries in Africa? And if I ask you to give me a few words to talk about Africa, what would you say? War, disease, corruption, and safari. That's the Africa we know from BBC, CNN, the media. But that is not the complete, real Africa. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 stories, which is from the other side of the Africa and the potential of it. Let me start with my real story. I came to Ethiopia in year 2011 to set up a shoe factory. It took me 3 months from deciding investment to actual production. In the following 6 months, I doubled the export revenue in Ethiopia in the shoe sector. By the end of year 1, I recruited 2,000 local workers. By the end of year 2, I recruited 4,000 local workers. You're probably wondering, why did you pick Ethiopia in year 2011? Ethiopia ranked 125 in World Bank Doing Business report. Why? The answer is, I did not pick Ethiopia. It was Ethiopia who picked us. The story started in March 2011 when the late Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Meles, had a meeting with Professor Justin Lin Yifu, the chief economist of the World Bank. And the Prime Minister asked Justin's advice in terms of poverty reduction and economic transformation. Justin advised him 3 things. Number 1, he said, job creation, it is the key for poverty reduction. Secondly, he said, the fundamental secret for economic transformation in China in the 80s and also Asia for Tiger and Japan in the 60s because they captured the window of opportunity during industrialization relocation and they created millions of jobs that enabled those economies for jump start in their economic transformation. And right now, China is about to relocate 85 million labor-intensive jobs. That's a golden opportunity for Africa. Now I want to take you for a closer look on some numbers. Back in 1978, the GDP per capita in China is only $154, which is less than 1/3 the sub-Saharan African countries. The economic growth in China has been a miracle in the past 35 years. 680 million people has escaped poverty in China. According to World Bank, the number of the people living under the international poverty line, which is $1.25 a day in the world since 1960, didn't decline if we exclude the 680 million people from China. And in year 2014, the GDP per capita in China is 7,500. And according to forecast, by 2020, China is going to become a high-income country. What does that mean? That means China is moving from a labor-intensive economy to a more capital-intensive economy. All the labor-intensive manufacturing jobs have to be relocated out of China in the coming few years, exactly like what happened in Japan in the 1960s, what happened in Hong Kong and Taiwan in the 80s. But this round of relocation is far more complicated. Because when Korea was relocating, we're talking about 2.3 million jobs. And when Japan was relocating in the 60s, we're talking about 9.7 million jobs. But this round, China is a nation with 1.3 billion population, and 10% are currently engaged in manufacturing. That's 130 million. And out of it, 85 are labor-intensive jobs. Where would those jobs to go? Some people say Southeast Asia, but my answer is yes, but only a small proportion of it. Why? Compared with 1.3 billion population in China, Southeast Asia does not have enough population to absorb all the jobs. In Vietnam, there are only 88 million population, 14 in Cambodia, 48 in Myanmar. That's why we're seeing the rate of the salary increase in Vietnam is even higher in China in the past 5 years. That's why the first time in the history there is this opportunity for Africa. And that is also the reason the last thing Professor Justin Lin advised the late Prime Minister as the remedy for African countries. He said, you need to create a quick success examples because that will bring inspiration, leadership, confidence to Ethiopia and to the continent. The Prime Minister took his advice, went to China 6 months later, and invited a group of investors. I was among them. This is how the story started. So it is leadership and vision and willingness to develop who brought manufacturing to Ethiopia.